We are told that history is a fixed record, an immutable series of events. But history is also a matter of perception. To the imposter, the past is not a cage, but a wardrobe. A collection of identities to be donned and discarded. In February 1920, a woman was dragged from the Landwehr Canal in Berlin. She carried no identification. She refused to speak. In the hospital, she was labeled Fräulein Unbekannt, if Miss Unknown. But within those sterile walls, she would begin the most audacious suggestio, the substitution of one person for another in modern history. These are not merely stories of theft. They are studies in the persona ficta, that fictional person created so vividly that the world forgets to look for the human beneath. Today, we examine the architecture of the lie. Today, we examine the architecture of the lie. "40 years after the princess emerged in Berlin, a 16-year-old in New York named Frank Abagnale Jr. realized that the world doesn't see people, it sees uniforms. He didn't just forge checks, he forged a presence. By donning the uniform of a Pan Am co-pilot, he exploited a psychological loophole. People don't question the man who looks like he's in charge of 100 lives. While Abagnale used the noise of the jet age, Anna Anderson used the silence of the Russian tragedy. She adopted the mannerisms of the Grand Duchess Anastasia Nikolaevna. She spoke of the basement in Yekaterinburg, the smell of gunpowder, and the bayonets of the Bolsheviks. She didn't need a uniform, she needed scars. Why did we believe them? For the Russian exiles, Anna Anderson was a living scintilla, a tiny spark of hope in the darkness of their displacement. If Anastasia lived, then the old world hadn't truly died. They overlooked her inability to speak Russian, attributing it to the trauma of the execution. Their grief was her greatest ally. Abagnale's audience was different. He exploited the fides publica, that's public trust of a booming, post-war America. In an era before digital verification, a confident smile and a convincing letterhead were as good as gold. He stayed ahead of the FBI by moving through the air, a ghost in a pilot's cap. But every lie has a shelf life. In 1969, the French police caught up with Abagnale. The glamorous life of the high-flying pilot ended in the damp, lightless cells of Perpignan. For Anna Anderson, the end was slower and more clinical. She died in 1984, still claiming her royal birthright. But in 1994, the truth was finally extracted from her cells. Using mitochondrial DNA from a tissue sample and comparing it to Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, a descendant of the Tsarina's sister, the verdict was absolute. Anna Anderson was not a Romanov. She was Franziska Szankowska, a Polish factory worker with a history of mental collapse. The veritas, the objective truth, had finally caught up with the myth. What remains when the mask is removed? Abagnale turned his modus operandi into a career, becoming one of the world's leading experts on bank fraud. He used his talent for deception to protect the very institutions he once pillaged. Anna Anderson, however, left a darker legacy. She showed us that we often prefer a beautiful lie to a tragic truth. We wanted the princess to survive so badly that we ignored the physical evidence staring us in the face for 60 years. History is a record of what happened. But the stories of the imposters remind us that history is also a record of what we wanted to happen. In the end, the most successful imposters don't just fool us. They show us who we really are.